going to... Order.
The Just Representation of the People, Northern Ireland Amendment Regulations 2025.
And I call the Minister to move the motion.
Thank you very much. Even more than normal, Chair. Thank you, Mr Mandel. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I beg to move that the committee has considered the Draft Representation of the People, Northern Ireland Amendment Regulations 2025. Honourable members, as set out in our manifesto, this government is committed to strengthening and encouraging participation in our democracy. This statutory instrument will help achieve that by ensuring that those who remain eligible to be registered but did not respond to the last electoral canvass can remain registered while attempts are made to contact them. I should like to thank the Electoral Commission and the Chief Electoral Officer for Northern Ireland, the CEO, for their support in the design of the retention framework set out in these regulations that we are considering today. Unlike the process in Great Britain, there is no annual canvass in Northern Ireland. Instead, the CEO is required to conduct a canvass at least every 10 years, and the last one was held in 2021. During this canvass, all eligible individuals must respond by completing a full new application form or risk removal from the register. Existing law provides that individuals who do not respond to the canvass can be retained for up to 3 years if the CEO continues to be satisfied with their eligibility. These are called retained electors. The CEO is able to assess eligibility by cross-checking the register with local and government data. Following the 2021 canvass, there are 87,000 retained electors on the register. That's around 6% of the electorate in Northern Ireland. That canvass was now 3 years ago, and so under the existing provisions, they will all be removed from the register next month. That's why it's really important that we're all here today. The CEO's assessment is that almost all of those retained electors remain eligible. These regulations seek to correct this position by extending the retention period from 3 to 6 years. Given the 3 years that have already elapsed since the 2021 canvass, the current retained cohort will start this new framework in year 4 of the 10-year cycle and be subject to the provisions relating to years 4 to 6 of the scheme. Electors retained on the register following any subsequent canvass, including that scheduled for 2030, will be subject to the steps for years 1 to year 6. Crucially, these new provisions stipulate the required minimum engagements which must be taken by the CEO each year of the retention years to encourage re-registration, including an annual audit of retained electors and a framework of correspondence. The provisions are designed to prevent the loss of retained electors, which would negatively impact the quality of the electoral register in Northern Ireland and potentially disenfranchise electors. The CEO is clear that he has full confidence in the quality of the data available, allowing him confidence of retention and removals where those are warranted. The data available, due to additional data and improvements in data science, is of a much higher quality than when the current law was originally conceived. I'll explain a bit more about the details of the framework. This SI will introduce a new annual residence audit, which the CEO will be required to conduct every year to check residence details of retained electors against the external data available. Where the audit raises a question as to the elector's residence, a removal warning notice must be sent. If they then do not re-register within 28 days of the notice, they will be removed from the register. In years 1 to 3 following the canvass, where, as a result of the audit, the CEO remains satisfied that the elector remains eligible to be on the register, no further action will be taken. But in years 4 to 5, which is where we are now of the electoral cycle, where the CEO is satisfied that retained electors remain resident, they will be sent a household notice showing which electors must re-register or risk removal. They will not, at this stage, be removed. The primary legislation is clear that non-respondents may not be retained indefinitely. Consequently, in the 6th and final year, all the remaining retained electors will be sent up to 3 notices informing them that if they do not re-register, they will be removed. If they fail to respond, then they will be removed. The purpose of this framework is to ensure reasonable efforts are made to prevent the loss of eligible electors from the register. As the last canvass was held in 2021, only those provisions in the regulations concerning years 4 to 6 will apply to the currently retained electors. I hope the committee agrees that these changes will encourage and secure participation in the democratic process in Northern Ireland. Thank you.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Representation of the People, Northern Ireland Amendment Regulations 2025. Alex Burkhardt.
Thank you very much. And I welcome welcome you to your seat and wish you a very happy New Year and happy New Year to all honourable members. Look, it'd be very interesting to hear what the Minister had to say, and obviously we don't intend to oppose regulations today, but we do have some reasonably significant questions, and because if 87,000 voters are about to fall off the register in Northern Ireland, and I believe this to be an unusually high number, what do we think is causing this? And that I think we're dealing perhaps with the symptoms rather than the cause of the problem. And it'd be useful to know a little bit more about what we think, what the government thinks has led to this circumstance arising. And I think there's also a question about that we should do with the House could do with a little reassurance over the reliability of the local and government data that is being used to continue this process. I read the explanatory notes and I understand that's there, but I think we could do with a little more detail just to know that, that this is accurate. And then I think it would be helpful to hear from the government that it doesn't have, well, what was I going to say? No, I'd like to know from the government whether they've considered harmonising the system, the good system that we have in Great Britain, with that in Northern Ireland. That is to say, here we have annual canvasses. It's a very reliable system. Why? I understand that there were reasons why in 1983, when the original legislation was brought in, there was considered a need to differentiate Northern Ireland. But a lot has moved on since then. And would it not be better for the country as a whole if we had one system that was used in all four of the home nations? Last of all, I'd be keen to understand this perhaps reaches slightly outside of the Honourable Lady's brief, so I understand if she or one of her colleagues will need to write to me on it. But obviously in Northern Ireland there is a long tradition of voter ID to accompany registration. And there have been some rumours in the press recently that the government is considering doing away with voter ID in the UK. Would that cover just GB, or would it cover GB and Northern Ireland? And by when can we hope to have some clarity on what the government's position is? But with that, Mr. Chair, I will resume my seat.
Do you wish to speak, Dr. Peterson? No. Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mandel. Pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Just to follow on a couple of queries to the Government Minister, if possible, and again it goes back to those 87,700 retained electors that the Chief Electoral Officer says is going to be removed as of the 1st of February, but I do know from the assessment that it also says that they are therefore eligible to be registered to vote at this address. So under the explanation, it would seem to say that those 87,700 electors are actually real, live and able and applicable to vote in Northern Ireland, and I assume had the opportunity to do so only 6 or 7 months ago in relation to the general election. So it is, in my opinion, an exceptionally high number, and I was wondering if the government, maybe not at this stage, Mr. Mundell, but can actually ask the Chief Electoral Officer to provide a breakdown of those 87,700 by constituency, so we could see if there is a trend or something specific that we need to be aware of in Northern Ireland in regards to those registrations. And I suppose in a more specific question, under 46C, under retained registered entries residence audit, it actually says that there is an opportunity to conduct a residence audit in respect of any retained elector. So, Mr. Mandel, that would seem to indicate that there is the opportunity to do an individual residence audit. And I was just wondering, is that the intention of this SI? And if it is so, who would instigate such an audit of an individual's residence to see if they are actually eligible to vote or are a retained elector in regards to that before a removal warning actually is issued to them? Is it something that could be instigated only by the Chief Electoral Officer and his staff, or could it be something that is highlighted by a member of the general public in regards to querying the eligibility of an elector actually residence at an address? And to pick up on the shadow spokesman for Northern Ireland in regards to voter ID, could I encourage the government to look at how it is used in Northern Ireland, and perhaps Mr Mundell encourage them to extend it to the rest of the United Kingdom?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the honourable members for raising those questions. It's an important piece of legislation. It's important to get right. The number of electors is 87,000. It sounds very high. It's out of a total electorate of 1.36 million and is not an unusually high number in the history of elections and the electorate in Northern Ireland. It's increasingly difficult to get people to fill out forms, which is why we hope that this SI will enable another 3 years with a concerted effort of correspondence plus the checking will actually increase the number there. This SI sets out how the CEO, as I've said, will try to contact non-respondees, but the CEO does not consider this as an unusually high number or any particular spike. It is as standard across the United Kingdom in terms of numbers, not on electoral roll, but that potentially could be. The CEO is absolutely has assured. Making assurances of the reliability of data through cross-checking that data with other systems. And if someone is found to have moved in cross-checking with other government data, they will be asked to be removed from the system. So those people who are retained are on the system in another government area of data. So that reliability of data can be assured. The harmonising of the system in Great Britain is another whole issue. And actually, passing this legislation today gives the government an extra 3 years to consider what changes could be made to look again at this. And the government will be looking at other ways in which can increase democratic participation as well. So this will be a subject of discussion for the next 3 years, but this SI really enables exactly that to happen. There is a different history in Northern Ireland, which is why there are different systems. So a direct harmonising isn't as easy as it sounds, but it needs to be discussed. And also the honourable member asked about using voter ID. I don't know about speculation in the press, but I can obviously ask the relevant minister to get back on that and as to when that will be discussed. I know that this government is committed to increasing the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds. That will be on the table for the next few years and it will be discussed there. As for those other members, other questions from the member for North Antrim, the CEO does have confidence, but I will get back and break down, South Antrim, we'll get back and ask for a breakdown by constituency. I think that would be very interesting for the members to see and for others to see if there's a difference or discrepancy or if there's a reason for more or fewer voters to be on that retained electorate in different constituencies. And the cross-check is done with other data. So can an individual query this? Well, this is a system for the CEO to look at. And there is that whole method of using that cross-checking every year, which is going to be put in to the legislation because of this SI. As for an individual querying whether another person should be on the electoral register, that would be a different matter entirely. So I thank you for the questions. And I thank all the honourable members for being here today. I thank the NIO officials and the clerks for being here today as well to consider these instruments and enable us to ensure that we're strengthening the electoral system by working to do all we can to encourage engagement in democracy. Confidence that the system works for us all is essential. I am therefore pleased to be able to introduce this instrument and I beg to move.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Representation of the People, Northern Ireland Amendment Regulations 2025. As many as are of that opinion say aye. 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 Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order.